Well, it's very distressing to drive the streets of Newman to see so many houses with windows boarded up, with front yards looking unkempt, and quite frankly, left to neglect. There is a responsibility, we think, not only from BHP but from the Department of Housing to make sure that they are maintaining these properties appropriately, and it's absolutely having an impact on the residents and the businesses and the people that call Newman home. It's shocking. It's house after house after house in amongst these beautiful houses that are being looked after, nicely presented. We've got boarded up houses like the one behind me, looking completely and utterly neglected. It's simply not acceptable. BHP needs to do more about managing their housing stock. The Department of Housing needs to do more about their housing stock here in Newman. It is simply unacceptable from the perspective of BHP to be shifting their workers from Curra Village into two more essentially mining camps within town instead of doing what they'd promised to do, which is increase the amount of opportunities for people to take on a residential lifestyle. There are pockets that are amazing. You go to some of the facilities that have been supported by previous government investment, and you see the aspiration that this community has to be an amazing place here in the Pilbara, and then you drive to other pockets and quite frankly it's disgraceful. Having driven around Newman and thinking about what it looked like during the boom and even what it looked like before that to now, this is a town that has been neglected by not only the state government in the management of the Department of Housing facilities and properties, but BHP. They are both significant homeowners in this community. They can make the difference between this community looking like a vibrant and loved community to one that looks neglected and a little bit like a war zone in parts. And that's certainly the concerns that have been raised with us as we've had a look around the town today. I'm struggling to think of when I've seen this many boarded up houses. I mean, you can drive down the street that's behind me and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10 houses nearly in a row where they are boarded up, and they have clearly been that way for some time. There are, if you just go around the corner, a number of houses that have just had their windows completely smashed out, and this is unacceptable. Where we know that they are owned by the Department of Housing, or for BHP, in BHP's perspective, we expect more. This is a community that's crying out for help. The Shire has been advocating to the state government for assistance in trying to deal with some of the challenges that they are facing, and certainly if they had BHP and the Department of Housing from a state government perspective making a little bit more effort, I'm sure some of those issues could be resolved. Well, from my perspective, the state government needs to be not only looking after its own housing stock, but they need to be sitting down and having a very serious conversation with BHP around the future of their houses and their housing stock. We've always said that the government has a role not only to encourage investment from companies like BHP, but to also send strong signals that they have an expectation around a residential workforce. This is a community that can sustain a residential workforce. They have an aspiration to be more than a dormitory town, and there is certainly the capability to utilise some of the vacant and empty housing that is being left to rot and causing enormous social issues in this community. They need to do more. They need to be sitting down with BHP and actually asking them to make sure they've got a set timeline for investment and work with them to get that outcome. That to me says this government actually isn't having the conversations that are needed, and they need to start listening to the community and do more to make sure that these communities are not left to rot. There are too many houses that are sitting vacant, not only with BHP, but with the Department of Housing, and quite frankly, it's shocking. So under the previous Liberal National government, there was significant investment in communities like Newman. You see the Martinmilli Art Gallery and cultural precinct, which is a fantastic asset for this town. You've seen the redevelopment of the main street and the investment in the town square. This is a community that is seeking to thrive, not just survive. And what's disappointing is that the McGowan Labor government has pulled money from royalties for regions, has taken the pressure off BHP to make sure that they've got a residential workforce, and you start to see things unravelling. So it leaves the Shire and the community struggling to see what their future is, and it's not good enough. So when you start to see things like we've got behind us with boarded up windows, and it's not just 1 or 2 houses, we're talking significant numbers in a community, We believe that this is a mark of this Labor government's investment in regional WA. They have no intention of spending money up here. They have no intention of sending the right signals to the companies that operate out of these communities. And as a result, these communities are being left behind. Regional development is hard. It needs to be sustained. And under this Labor-McGowan government, we've seen it fall behind once again.